Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. Today we're going to talk about nurturing acceptance in your child. There are so many dimensions to this. Wow. Okay, so here's one of the first things. Your child needs to be able to accept your directions. They need to be able to accept your correction. They need to be able to accept your discipline. They need to be able to accept your love and affection. They need to be able to accept your rules, your routine, your household expectations. Yeah, they need to be able to accept a lot of things. How do you nurture that in them? If you start off as a baby, of course, like everything, it's the easiest. And so you have a household routine, you have a disciplined schedule, you have certain things they may eat and a time that they go to bed. And oh my gracious, they just grow up with that. Still, you can expect a certain amount of rebellion or I don't like it or I want to do it my own way by the time they're 2.5, 3, 4 years old. That's going to happen. And that's where nurturing acceptance is such a big thing because for the rest of their life, they are going to have rules to follow. For the rest of their life, someone somewhere is going to have authority in their life, whether that's their boss, their pastor, a coworker who's just in a supervisory position. Yeah, our entire life, we have to accept that there are going to be things we don't like, things that are going to go away that go in a direction that opposes our ideas or our preferences. There's so much to accept. So when you nurture that acceptance in a child of routine and scheduling, authority, constructive criticism, discipline, instruction, you're doing great things for her for the rest of her life because this is part of life. And in a minute, we'll get to the acceptance of people and different kinds of ideas. But just in the beginning, just acceptance of your authority as a parent and your concepts as a parent and your teaching and training and discipline and nurturing and fostering and all those things, just to accept that out of you. If you're just getting with me and your child is a middle schooler or even a middle kid, a kid from about 5 to 10 or 11, you're going to probably meet a little more resistance. And if you've let your kid get away with doing anything she wanted to at whatever time of the day and basically run her own life, and now you're going to start to kind of put on the brakes a little bit and be a little more active parent and have a more managed household, yeah, you can expect this to take a little more time. Don't be discouraged. It's like everything else in parenting. We're on the long haul. We're not going to see anything happen in the next few days, maybe even in the next few months. And that's a realistic expectation. We know about this. All right. So you're going to nurture acceptance in your child about what's going on. So you say to him or her, more than once, but gently when it comes up, in our house, this is the way we are going to do things now. I realize this isn't what we always did. This might feel a little strange to you. This might feel a little awkward to you. No one loves change. Yet you have to accept that change comes. Sometimes it is a welcome change. Sometimes it's an unwelcome change. Sometimes it's a change that brings great results. Sometimes it's a change that brings unexpectedly bad results that nobody could have imagined and none of us will like. That can happen with a job change. You take the job because it looks like a really great job and you're going to make more money and it's closer to home, and it turns out to be not a great experience. I've known tons of people who have lived through that. So, if we learn as a child to accept that change happens and difficulties happen, and sometimes unexpected problems happen, and we learn how to cope with those things, then you're really doing a lot of preparation for your child's life and the well being of your child long term. This is why you're going to teach your child acceptance and you're going to nurture it in that child and you're going to give them tools with which to cope. Okay, so you initiate a small change or a big one, either way, but you acknowledge to your child that change is difficult, but you have to accept that change comes. Okay, you have to accept that sometimes things happen you don't like. It's the truth. At school, you might hate math, but oh my gracious, you still have to do math because if you don't, somebody's going to rip you off for the rest of your life. You'll never know if you're getting paid correctly, if you're paying the right price when you go to buy gas. And there are just implications all over the world about why you must know math. You have to accept that math may not be your best subject or your favorite subject, but you have to learn math anyway. And there are just so many implications about acceptance. I'm going to tell you one of the reasons this matters. A lot of kids, especially in mid years, 5 to 10, they're just mean as anything. I kid you not. I know, I've taught school. I've worked in an aftercare program where I had kids from the ages of 3 to 12, and kids are just not very nice sometimes. If a child doesn't even have any sense of accepting herself, and all these kids say horrible things, she's going to end up in real trouble. So acceptance has broad range implications in your child's life. It sometimes is a lot easier to accept external things than internal. You want to teach both at the same time, but you can emphasize the external things when they're very small, and it will help them begin to gain an understanding of what acceptance is. Sometimes we think of the opposite of acceptance as rejection, which it can be. But let me tell you, sometimes the opposite of acceptance is resistance, the whole strong arm thing. You're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to boss me. That resistance thing, that can be the opposite of acceptance. Sometimes one of the evidences of acceptance is an attitude of cooperation, a quieter spirit that can just say, okay. Another thing acceptance is it's not resignation. Resignation is this. Okay, if I have to. Yeah, that's not acceptance. That's resignation. Like I'm resigned to doing this thing. But nobody said I was going to like it. Even in acceptance, they may not like it. There's a much calmer spirit associated with acceptance, and you have to nurture that, okay? And sometimes that involves things like saying, I know you really wanted to go to the park today, but we can't because it's rainy. You have to accept an alternative plan. And we had these great plans. Sometimes, for example, you might have a plan to go to Dollywood or Disneyland, and someone becomes ill, and you just cannot possibly go. Well, if you haven't taught your child anything about acceptance, he or she might pitch a fit, make everybody in the family utterly miserable for not just that week when you were supposed to be on vacation, but months to come. If you teach your child acceptance, things happen. And so instead, we'll stay home. We still have this time off. And though I'm taking care of your grandmother or taking care of your aunt, we can still do really fun things. So though we won't be doing exactly what we had planned, you can accept that things change and we'll still have a good time. You nurture acceptance in your child. I will say to you that you should actually literally occasionally do this intentionally without telling your child. In other words, you have these big plans, and on that day, you change those plans. You have to know that you're going to be dealing with disappointment. You might be dealing with some anger, but you're teaching your child to accept that some things happen. It's not always going to go just how you want it. Now, let me say this to you, Mom and Dad. If you're really bad, if you do a poor job at accepting the unexpected, and you've been modeling that in front of your child, they are going to have a harder time with this. So again, it's one of those things you might have the opportunity to learn alongside of your child, to accept disappointment, accept change, accept the unexpected, both pleasant and unpleasant, and deal with it in a healthy way. All right? Now, let me tell you about nurturing acceptance in your child of other people. One of the ways to do that is if there is a handicapped child anywhere, in your neighborhood, in your church, in your child's school, they don't have to be in your child's class. Give your child some exposure to that person so they can learn how to accept someone who is different than they. So if you have a child in your sphere who is blind or deaf or in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy. You find that child and you encourage and foster the relationship between your child and that child. So that though that child may not function in the exact same way as your child can accept someone who is a lot different than them, and it will also perhaps even help them to learn compassion. Or maybe they'll find out that person isn't nearly as different as they had thought they were just because they can't see, or just because they cannot hear, or just because they cannot walk. So nurture acceptance in your child by exposing them to people who aren't just exactly the same as they are. Another way to do that is by nurturing acceptance of other cultures. So you might take your child to, like, say, some kind of Latino festival, okay? Cinco de Mayo. I know bars have great deals, but I'm talking about maybe go to a park where they're having a familial Cinco de Mayo festival and expose your child to different kinds of cultures. So instead of them going, man, that person talks really funny, they're kind of weird, they eat really weird food, you can say, they are really different than we are. They have an entirely different kind of culture. They don't eat the same food. They don't speak the same language. They don't even dress the same when they're in their own native country. And yet, they have a really beautiful culture. So you are nurturing acceptance in your child of another people group or another cultural group. That's just a really good thing to do. And besides, it's totally fun. You know, you can go to all kinds of festivals depending upon where you live. If you're in a bigger city, Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, LA, yeah, I think Atlanta even has some of these. You can literally go to things. You have to look for them, but you can find them. A Chinese New Year festival or a Greek festival, or I've even been to a Hungarian folk dance couple of days. That was awesome, actually. I had a blast. I really liked the food. Expose your children to different things so they learn how to accept other peoples and other cultures. Of course, that includes people of another color than yours. Okay? So I don't care if it's yellow or brown or darker brown or white or some version of somebody that's different than you look. Expose your child to people of different people groups and help them to start to learn that you just accept people not based on their color, but based on themselves and based on their inherent value as a human being. So I want you to start nurturing acceptance in your child. Also, a huge one. This one starts actually, it starts as a baby, but I mean, it really gets serious about the time they start going to school. Because then they're looking at all these other people and seeing themselves a little bit differently. And it is a part of human nature. When we do that, we often look at ourselves less favorably than we look at others. So we look at our shortcomings, we look at our problems, we look at where we aren't as good or as pretty, as strong, as fast, as smart, as something, as someone who's biased. And we come up short. So, what we need to do is foster self acceptance in our child. Part of how you do that, let me tell you something. When you're giving your child a bath and you're washing their hands really gently, you can say, oh, those are beautiful, strong hands. Those are hands that can make beautiful things. Those are hands that when you hug me, I feel so good. Those are hands that when you are kind to your sister, they are such beautiful hands. Those are hands that make beautiful artwork, and those are hands that are very helpful. You are literally fostering self acceptance in your child. When your child does something really well, whatever that thing is, because everyone does do something well, you need to nurture self acceptance. Boy, that is a great gift. You are so good with color. The way you put colors together, I totally admire that. You are so fast. You have such a great capacity to run. When you run, it's a thing of beauty. Your body just goes like crazy. That is amazing. I think you're such a great runner. You are just a beautiful soul in the way that you create and the way that you think and the way that you imagine. I love that about you. You are giving them acceptance and you are nurturing self acceptance in them. That way, when they hit middle school and those really tough teen years and there's a lot of self-rejection and a lot of angst. They already have a basis of acceptance there, and you continue to nurture that acceptance in them. When a girl's body starts changing and she doesn't like it, you say, "Oh, you're going to be such a beautiful woman." And you are a very beautiful young woman right now. You nurture acceptance. When they're getting tall and they're kind of gangly and awkward and they have pimples and they hate it, you say, "Oh, there are hormones going on in your body, son, and I know they're pushing you all over the place." And you shot up and your voice is squeaky and deep at turns and you feel kind of awkward. But you're becoming a man and you're going to be such a great man. I'm really excited about the kind of man you're becoming. You keep on nurturing acceptance in that child in order that they can learn how to accept themselves. So I want you to begin today nurturing acceptance in your child of unexpected change and of challenges and of difficulties. And I want you to encourage them about accepting change in themselves and just accepting what is, what happens, and who they are. It is a great thing, a really good gift to share with your child. I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. Please feel free to send me an email, contact me through paintabeautifulpicture.com, give me a comment, or leave me a question below, and I will be happy to get back to you. Thank you so much. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.